Welcome, everyone. This is our second conversation in our Captured Land series for 2024, and it's called Our Land, Securing Collective Futures in Self-Built Communities. So we'll start, of course, with introducing our keynote. Let me turn off my fan. And then move into their presentation and then get into a discussion followed by audience Q&A. If you have any questions, any ideas or comments, please feel free to start putting them in the chat, and we hope we'll be able to have enough time to get to all of them towards the end. So like other former plantation colonies in the Caribbean, Jamaica, which is where I am right now, has a very long tradition of self-built housing, with early documentation of housing on sugar plantations being built by enslaved people. So self-built or self-help housing refers to dwellings to which the inhabitants have contributed all or most of the construction input themselves. So by the 1990s, more than 2/3 of the population of Montego Bay and about half of the town of Spanish Town, which is our old capital, fell into this category. Island-wide, the state estimates that over 20% of the population is living informally. Despite the legacy of people incrementally improving and expanding their accommodations over time, state resources have gone almost entirely towards facilitating the private housing market through financing of long-term mortgages for sprawling suburban housing units. This option has been out of the reach of most Jamaicans for a long period of time. So the Captured Land webinar series really examines the legacy of our approaches to providing affordable and decent housing across the Caribbean, and we discuss the outcomes. So my name is Doreen Duncan. I'm the Executive Director of Island City Lab. For those of you who don't know, Island City Lab, we're a Kingston-based urban think tank dedicated to understanding the unique features and challenges of small island cities in the Caribbean. So our aim is really to improve our built environment by building, fostering, and convening a network of civic thinkers to confront the challenges. This forum, this webinar, is part of that programming. So in this webinar, we are hoping to explore how a self-built community in Puerto Rico, our neighbors, achieved land tenure security through collective or communal land ownership. So residents of the Caño Martín Peña created the first community land trust in Latin America, ensuring affordability and protection from displacement and gentrification. Rejecting the approach of individual titles, communal ownership has been an instrument of emancipation and community empowerment. So we're super happy to have been joined by several folks from the Caño Peña team. I'm going to introduce William first. So William is a licensed professional planner with 7 years of experience as a technical facilitator for the Caño Martín Peña communities. He holds a bachelor's degree in political science from the University of Puerto Rico, Mayagüez campus, and a master's degree in planning with an emphasis on environmental social planning from the Graduate School of Planning at the University of Puerto Rico. He currently serves as the assistant to the director of Martin Peña Channel Land Trust. And we may also be joined by his colleague, Mariolga Pacheco. She directs the Office of Community Engagement and Social Development of the Caño Martín Peña Enlace Project. She's a graduate of the Beatrice Graduate School of Social Work at the University of Puerto Rico. Her first approach to the Caño was as a volunteer and later as a student intern. She has served as a special projects manager of the Fideicomiso de la Tierra del Caño Martín Peña. I apologize, guys. I know I messed that up. Where she led the processes for granting of surface rights deeds to its members. One of her roles has been the institutional and participatory governance development of this collective land tenure instrument. She's part of the team that put the law and the regulations into practice. So with that, I'm going to bring on William. I'm going to ask you to share your screen, William, and to turn on your camera so we can spotlight you.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, thank you for having me. let me know if you can see the presentation.
Yep, we can see it and you sound good.
So we're ready. First of all, I would like to start this presentation to saying to all of the audience that don't take this presentation like a one size fit shirt. This is not a one size fit shirt. Every community deserve and every um people deserve to construct their own path, and there's no one size fit for all organizations, for communities. So that said, I would like to introduce the Caño Martín Peña Enlace project, which is a project that is a community project, but also have two others institution backing up this effort in Puerto Rico. So today I will present the Caño Martín Peña Special Planning District is in its community context, the role of public participation and in the policymaking of and the Fideicomiso de la Tierra del Caño Martín Peña, which is also our land trust. So I would like to start with a little bit of context about Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is a U.S. territory since 1898, and we have right now a 3.1 million population. And as you may notice, with my accent, our language is Spanish, but we also, with the territorial condition, we also talk in English. The community of the Caño Martín Peña are located in the metropolitan area of San Juan, surrounding like 8 other municipalities, but is located in the heart of San Juan metropolitan area. It is composed by, our special planning district is composed by 8 community, is geographically distributed between Barrio Obrero Marina, Barrio Obrero San Ciprián, Barrio Buenavista Santurce, Buenavista Torrey, Las Monjas, Israel Bitumul, Parada 27. Those 8 communities compose our special planning district. As you may notice in the presentation, there is a body of water that's crossed between the north and the south of the communities. It's a 3.7 mile tidal channel, which is right now in a difficult condition, and is maybe some of you know our project because of this situation, because the main project is the dredge of the Caño Martín Peña, but it's not the only project. So this fideicomiso or our land trust start with the water body and these 8 communities. I would like to give a little context about our district, our population. We have an estimate between 11 and 7,000 residents, and that gap between 11 and 7,000 residents is because of the way that the census is conducted here. We have many migrant population, and as you may know, not everyone who is migrant, not everyone answer the census, but if you are in a difficult migratory situation, well, you may not answer the census of the US. So as you may notice, our communities and elderly have a majority elderly population. The vast majority are below of the poverty line, with average income is less than the average of the Puerto Rico and also of the municipality of San Juan. So it's a vulnerable population here. As we go through the presentation, I would like to give you a context about the community, how they get formed. In 2000 in the 20s, the Senate resolved that mangrove could be sold as they were associated with malaria mosquito. So the government start to build houses in Barrio Obrero and in the 40s. With the downfall of the sugarcane industry, Hurricane San Felipe and San Ciprian intensifies the migration to San Juan, and there start more informal settlements on the banks of the Caño Martín Peña, which is the water body that you are seeing in that photo. And in the 80s, the government reached the west portion of the Caño Martín Peña and removed some of the community located in that zone. So in 2000s, when the government have a project, a transportation project for the Caño Martín Peña, the people start to hear that there will be a project here. Some of technicals and governmental employees get here in the Caño Martín Peña and tell about that to the people. So the people that were already afraid of the displacements that have been doing in other projects start to organize. There's were a little organizing already organized community here, but when this notice about the new project start, they start to enforce that organizing. So in 2004, in 2002, between 2002 and 2004, they start a participatory planning process to evaluate the alternative to prevent displacement and regularize land tenure in Puerto Rico, in the district, sorry. And in 2004, the community organized by the G8 and some technical assistant here achieved to pass to our congressmen pass a law is to put to create this special private district and also create a comprehensive plan. So who is the G8? The G8 o Grupo de las Ocho Comunidades, G8, is a non-profit community-based organization founded in 2002 and incorporated in 2004. And they brings together the community leaders, volunteers, residents of the community surrounding the Caño Martín Peña. As I said before, that project that will take a part of that project of transportation, water transportation that will take part in the district. The communities already know about that they may get displaced, so the community already know about that will be happen to themselves if they don't organize. So in 2002, they found the G8. This same year, they start more than 700 meetings and participatory self-organized efforts. And the G8 achieved the creation of the Proyecto Enlace, which impulsed legislation that concludes in the creation of the comprehensive and development plan. We work in planning and participatory action philosophy. Here, that's our main framework, citizen participation methodology. So, with that 700 reunions, street by street, we the community get that law passed by our legislators and create these three entities. We call this project Proyecto Enlace, which means a link between the Caño Martín Peña people of the G8, which is the non-profit organization, but also work into different others organizations. The Corporación del Proyecto Enlace del Caño Martín Peña, which is a government entity and its role of coordination and implementation of the integral development plan for the Caño Martín Peña, and acts as non-federal partner of the ecological restoration and reach of the Caño. Also, we have the Fideicomiso de la Tierra, which bring us today here. Is a community land trust, is a non-profit organization, and is work like a novel model that promotes collective and land tenure as an option to informality and displacement. And is recognized by the ONU Habitat Award in 2015-16. This is our comprehensive plan. I will be showing photos about what is in place. So historical marginalized communities, migrants from the rural city to create these informal settlements on the banks of the Caño Martín Peña with the government support, and they lack of adequate infrastructure and such as sanitary and storm sewer systems. That's causing floodings in the communities, with consequences such as respiratory disease, stomach, skin, and other health issues. So that plans include the reach of the Caño Martín Peña water body, but also includes other series of projects in which is to give the community the all the infrastructure that they need. As you may know, we need to relocate persons in the footprint of those projects. So we work along together with a relocation committee, which is composed from leaders that has been also relocated, and with technical people of the corporation, so you can so they can feel not alone in this long process. But I would like to introduce some of the governance here. I have talked about the GA, but the GAs, which is the community-based organization, is the one who group all these other existing community boards in each communities. So it's like 14 is a group of 14 others community boards and other collective. We also have the institutional governance of the corporation and the land trust is in the hands of the community. For example, our board in the corporation have 5 community residents, and the 45% of the total number of the members of that board should need to be members of our communities. Also, for the board of trustees of the land trust, 6 community residents are part of the 11 total members. So it's interesting because everyone is represented. It's like 2 from the north of the communities, 2 from the south of the communities, 2 members appointed by the G8, and 2 members representing the private sector, but they need to be confirmed by the GA. And also, finally, 2 members from the governmental sector, 1 from the state and 1 from the municipal, and 1 representative of the board of director. I would like to introduce this video from the Fideicomiso, so you can understand this, what is our land trust, and then I will talk a little bit of the Fideicomiso.
El fideicomiso de la tierra. Un fideicomiso es como un contrato donde una persona protege los bienes de otra persona. Probablemente hayas escuchado que se usan para administrar dinero, propiedades y cosas así, pero hoy vamos a aprender sobre algo nuevo, el fideicomiso de la tierra. ¿Qué es eso? Pues para entender desde el principio, déjame contarte una historia. Hace muchos años atrás, la industrialización de Puerto Rico causó que mucha gente que vivía en el campo se mudara a la capital para trabajar en las fábricas. Poco a poco, estas familias construyeron sus casas en los márgenes del Caño Martín Peña para así estar más cerca de sus trabajos. Y así crearon comunidades que han permanecido por generaciones. Como se imaginan, todo ha crecido a su alrededor. Autopistas, negocios, la zona bancaria, centros comerciales. Con el tiempo, estos humildes terrenos se empezaron a ver muy atractivos para los especuladores, así que poco a poco han tratado de desplazar a estas familias. Pero no es tan fácil. Verás, como estas comunidades llevan aquí tantos años, algunas familias tienen un título de propiedad individual, o sea, un título que dice que ese pedacito de tierra donde ellos viven les pertenece a ellos. Las comunidades están compuestas de muchos pedacitos de tierra habitadas por familias, algunas con sus propios títulos. Pero ¿qué pasa? Como hay residentes que están pendientes en defender solo su propia tierra, la comunidad se convierte en un blanco fácil para que desarrolladores y especuladores inescrupulosos se aprovechen de esto. Y así, como ovejitas solitarias, es muy fácil convencer a las familias individuales de que vendan sus tierras. Puede que no te suene grave de momento, pero la realidad es que la gente termina vendiendo sus títulos por un valor muy por debajo al que luego el comprador le sacará provecho. Cuando terrenos que han estado en nuestras familias por generaciones son vendidos por tan poco dinero, eso es un mal negocio. Y la verdad es que separados es muy poco lo que podemos hacer para defendernos. ¿Qué tal si hubiese una manera de proteger el bienestar de todos los miembros de la comunidad de estas y otras injusticias? Y así, las comunidades del Caño se organizaron y surgió la idea del fideicomiso de la tierra. ¿Se acuerdan cuando dijimos que un fideicomiso es un contrato donde una persona protege los bienes de otros? Pues el fideicomiso de la tierra es eso mismo, pero representa a todos los miembros que viven en nuestra comunidad. Es, por decirlo así, un guardián gigante, producto de la unión de todos sus miembros. Gracias al fideicomiso de la tierra, cuando un especulador venga a tratar de convencer a doña Mercedes de que le venda su tierra por una miseria, doña Mercedes puede decir: no, habla con mi guardián. El fideicomiso de la tierra es el instrumento perfecto para promover la integración de los miembros de nuestra comunidad, así como para defendernos en contra del desplazamiento y poder desarrollar nuestras casas y vecindad. Mediante el fideicomiso, cada familia es dueña individual de su vivienda y recibirá una escritura de derecho de superficie. Ese derecho de superficie sobre el solar donde está la casa se puede vender, heredar o hipotecar. Es un derecho que tiene valor y aumenta la riqueza familiar, una mejor alternativa a los tradicionales títulos individuales, ya que todos somos dueños colectivamente de la tierra y la tierra no se vende. Así que ya sabes los beneficios importantes de pertenecer al fideicomiso de la tierra, ese guardián gigante de los derechos de nuestra comunidad, que se hace más y más fuerte cuando nos unimos todos. Con el fideicomiso de la tierra es de todos. Únete.
So that video probably explained the fideicomiso better than I can do. So for me, it's important that you can understand the figure of the fideicomiso. That is a possibility in the law, but it's more than a law. It's community is working together as a collective, is protecting our permanence in the community. So it's not only a figure in the all these laws or possibilities in the law, but also a continuous work and think in collective. So as the video shows, this slide is in Spanish, but I will try to do my best to translate it. As the video shows, each family is owner of the structure, but they are collective owners of the land. So you have a surface right deed, like a property title, but is for the use of the land, and that surface right deed recognize the property that family is the owner of the structure of the property, but is also owner of the land as a collective. So that surface right deed can be sold, you can inherit it, and you can mortgage it. Right now we have more than 150 surfer rights and more than 250 members in our land trust. But it's not only about the surface right did, it's about comprehensive development. So the fideicomiso, along with the G8 and the public corporation Enlace, works more than 30 socio-environmental justice programs here, from community environmental consents, community gardens, initiative for health issues, and also we have been response for emergencies like Hurricane Maria, Irma, the pandemic, COVID-19, and everything else. It is important that in every one of those programs is the community integrations, the most important part of those projects. Without community integration, without leadership, without all that public participation, it will not success. So as you may see here, we have those different programs with the community integration in all the projects, the response after Hurricane Maria, but also as part of that community engagement, we have community activism. And that's important because the corporation is a public corporation. The land trust is a figure that is composed of all of its members, but as an institution itself, it will be nothing without community activism. So I want to share about what the Fideicomiso is working right now along with the corporation. We are right now developing of new housings in the lots of the Fideicomiso with the land trust lots. And we have like 4 different models that can attend the situation of flooding of the communities here and mitigate that situation. So you can see that some of those models are elevated structures. We also have resilience centers that respond to the climate change situation. As you may know, as Caribbean islands, we are in the hallway of the hurricanes. So in the last maybe 10 years, those situations has increased, and we need to be ready. So the community, knowing that, the community start to make those resilience centers. And what is interesting of those centers, that they are located in properties that belongs to the land trust, but that properties was former schools in the district that were closed after Hurricane Maria. So that's this project attends like 3 situations: the situation that the need of the community center, the situation that they need to do something with those closest schools, so they don't convert in a bigger problem for the community. And also they need to have some activities in those places so they can continue share. They also, the landlords also have this project that they call Techo Digno, which is a minor accommodation of the houses of the members, such like painting their houses, do some litter construction. They also have temporary use agreement to and in the backend lots in the community. They can have community gardens, but also maybe some parking, maybe some recreational park. That's type of temporary use agreement. And those temporary use agreement is because in some of those lots, there will be construction of new house, maybe a construction of new housing. Together with the corporation and other allies of the land trust, the Fideicomiso de la Tierra de Caño Martín Peña is working on inventory of nuance and or at-risk properties, so they can attend that problem, so it's not convert in a bigger problem to our communities. And the importance of all of these programs is that the consistent in popular education and citizen participation. So we make community exchange and solidarity with another communities here in Puerto Rico, but also with other states like here in Jamaica, but we have been also with community exchange with Brazil, El Salvador, Peru, and other Latin American groups that are working together to have accessible housing and to treat this problem that we all are having. We also manage programs associated with environmental care and public health with new and active generations. Here you can see the youth people of the Caño Martín Peña. They have a group which is a community organization, formally community organization that they call LIHAC, is Leaders in Actions with in Spanish, Líderes Jóvenes en Acción. And we also have other program like NEO, and we also have American States volunteer program here, which help our youth people of the communities to integrate to this project. We also establish network to keep informed and create DG8 create Raíces with each a community newspapers, and they also make an organization called Redes, which is identify people in different streets of the communities so they can share those newspaper, but any community assembly or something, things like that. So also, we have committed to economic development. Right now, the G8 is have a micro enterprise here. They are developing the community hostel, so the people that visit the community can stay here, and it means an income to the G8 and the land trust. We have Bicicaño, which is tours in bicycle tours, and we have Hecho en el Caño, which is a registry for the different commercials or enterprise here in the district. So what we have achieved, we achieved the recognition of the role of the community and the role of the state and political parties candidates, the increase in the membership of the Fideicomiso and integration of the community organization process, allocation money for the bridge of the Caño Martín Peña and other infrastructure projects. And also, we have achieved the internalization of the land trust as an option of regularization of the land tenure in informal settlements. Three to four other community land trusts have been created in Puerto Rico. We have been recognized by different lot of organizations, starting with the Paul Davidoff Community Award for Change, Diversity and Change, but also most recently for the Global Impact Award from the ASLA. So as I started saying in this presentation, the Fideicomiso and the land trust is not one size fits all. It's important to note that every community deserves their way to control their own path, but it's an option, and that's why we are here. And that's all for me right now, but I would like to be to answer if there are any question and be part of the discussion of this of the fideicomiso and collective land tenure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, William. That was really exciting. There's a bunch of questions happening in the chat. I think lots of people are super interested in this structure. We see people from Trinidad talking about how that could work there, and people from Jamaica as well. So I'm going to bring on our other panelists, both Rachel and Carol, and ask Rika to spotlight them as well. But yeah, let me introduce our other panelists, right? So Rachel Goff is a geographer and architect. Her work is concerned with placemaking and livelihoods and how these are negotiated with, through, and against the post-colonial state formation. She has done research on conflict between emerging public policy to curtail squatting and radical traditions linked to durable yet insecure relationships to land in Jamaica, where she's originally from. She is an assistant professor in the Department of Human Geography and Department of Geography and Planning at the University of Toronto. We also have Dr. Carol Archer, has more than 25 years of experience in management, urban planning, education, training, and research. She has been employed to the University of Technology here in Jamaica since 2000. She was the Dean of the Faculty of the Built Environment at UTech from 2006 to 2016. And her passion for community development and service contributed to receiving the President's Distinguished Award for Research. I think if Maria from Caño Peña also wants to join, I don't have a bio for you, Maria, but let us know if you want to join. Turn on your camera and we will bring you on as well. So we got a lot of information a while ago. Thank you so much, William. And we know that both Carol and Rachel, you've been researching issues around sort of land tenure and the different ways and relationships that we have around land. And I want to, kind of bring you on first, Carol. Are community land trusts possible in Jamaica? And do you think that there is significant sort of legislative changes that need to be made in order for a community land trust to be possible here?
Right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me. Before I answer the question, I just want to introduce the audience to this very useful reader called the Community Land Trust Reader. It's published by the Lincoln Institute for Land Policy out of Mass. And I strongly encourage, because some of the questions that I'm seeing posed there in terms of the structure of the community land trust and so forth, it's answered here in this text, published recently, 2010. And just to put in context, community land trust has its history from as far back as Ebenezer Howard and, the Garden City, in terms of having land in common owned by the community. So is it possible here in Jamaica and perhaps the wider Caribbean? Yes. There has been attempt. So for example, Operation Pride, which was adopted here in Jamaica, borrowed from the Susuland approach in Trinidad. I would structure that within the context of the community land trust. It is somewhat problematic, though, given our existing legal and legislative framework. So what would be required, as it is now, what we have is to give tenure, land titling, ownership, individual, and of course, we would have had iterations of the LAMP program, which is managed through the National Land Agency now. But we find that also is problematic, because when you're talking about persons being able to access land, register land, getting title, it is a very, very costly process. So as it is now, less than 50% of the parcels of land in Jamaica are actually first registering that they're on the books to say these are the parcels of land. So because of that, and because of the difficulties we have with persons accessing land, I believe that an approach to community land trust should be considered in this new dispensation. It is going to be problematic, but I think, you know, looking at what exists in Puerto Rico, looking at changing the legislation, and so will support. And the fact that we have had the Operation Pride, which has the basis of what is there, can support.
Yeah. So summarize what you just said. Legally, it's not necessarily possible right now, but there is an immense need for us to figure out a way to get there, right?
Yes, absolutely. Primarily because of the economics of it. In certain communities, we are not going to have persons, because we saw that based on the project I was involved with in Nago's Head. Only, I would say 30% of the community could go through the regularization process, you know, getting the surveyor, so forth and so on. So and that's one of the reasons why we proposed, coming out of that project, the community land trust.
Perfect.
It's cost effective.
It's cost effective. Okay. All right. Yes. And so I want to bring in Rachel here, right? There is doing a community land trust in a kind of structured way that Caño Peña talked about, but we know that people are living communally right now, right? That people are figuring out collective ways to manage land today without that. And I guess, so the question I kind of want to pose to you, in Jamaica, which I don't think is unique, I imagine it might be in other Caribbean islands as well, most Jamaicans aspire to own their own home, right? And unfortunately, sort of collective living situations are often looked down upon. The song we played before we started was Rasta don't want to live in a tenement yard, right? So there we already have like a very negative perception of collective land tenure. Why do you think we should rethink that, the ways that we think about land and doing it in a sort of collective approach?
Is that for me?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think what I would say to that is, so I did ethnographic research in a community on the North Coast, where people had been living for generations. Many of the people living there had been connected to the former use of the land, which was as a sugar estate. And so they had been agricultural workers. And one of the things that I noted is how often people told me about conflicts that they had with people in the community, people they weren't talking to. And yet, the other side of that is I started to think about that this is a story that we tell ourselves. And I don't know why we tell ourselves that story, because the other side of it is that people were also cooperating on a daily basis, cooperating to get water, cooperating to watch each other's children, cooperating to fix roofs, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And so one of the things that I was really interested in by William's presentation is the video where he showed basically how do we change people's minds if we've been told that what has been withheld from us is individual property, and we orient ourselves to that. But in fact, and this relates also to Carol's point about the cost of titling, I think we also need to think about the cost of subdivision, which is very much related, right? So we're coming from a land system that was dominated by very large parcels in the plantation system. And the folks that I was talking to were living on a former estate that is hundreds of acres in size, right? And so the amount of effort and commitment and technical capacity, but dollars, right? That is required by subdividing that land has not been consistently taken up to the extent that it's needed by the population, right? It hasn't been taken up by the government. And so we could think of NHT as a subdivision program as much as we could think of it as a housing program, right? And so in some ways, I was thinking of informal settlements as a way for people to attempt to force the government to subdivide land. And so, and what that means is putting in, is the titling issue, but also roads and water and sewage and electricity and all of these things that should a developer buy a large parcel of land, they are going to put in those improvements and then, but at a market rate, and then that produces small parcels, which we have a shortage of small parcels, but it produces small parcels at a market rate. And so that squeezes out a lot of the people. So when we talk about so-called squatters, a lot of the focus is on people who are building big houses on land, and the kind of mischaracterization, I would say, of the overall problem. And what that does is, I think it shifts focus away from the fact that even if you have money to build a house, you may not be able to access a parcel of land that suits the house that you want to build. But also the vast majority of people, I think, who are in informal settlements don't have those kinds of resources. And so we should think about the problem in relationship to what it actually is, as opposed to those outliers.
Yeah.
So I kind of directed your question on.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to take it over to William, right? So we talked about people's perceptions in Jamaica, but I'm curious, William, did the residents in the G8 oppose this idea of collective land tenure, or were they excited about it?
Well, it's not different in any other place. Is we have the individual property in our DNA because of our economic system and how it's worked. But in the case of the Caño Martín Peña, the perspective of individual title was very similar of Jamaica, because for many years politicians offered individual titles to the families for the exchange of their vote in the elections. And this political situation impacted very huge in the individual perception of collective land tenure. However, something that was key here, that there was other communities displaced near the Caño Martín Peña. So as that was going on, the community already witnessed how other surrounding community has been displaced. So when they start those community meetings, and they start to discuss the different alternative, the community have to understand, and they understand that if they still working individually, they will be displaced too. So they also know that the comprehensive development plan will offer the price of the land here. So when the land, the value of the lands get up, they will be displaced. So it was important that the technicians here don't get to the people and say, this is your only options. They discuss different type of options. They discuss cooperative, they discuss individual titles, and also the land trust. And the people choose the land trust, but it is a continuous work. It's not that in 2004 they choose land trust. It's that right now is a continuous popular education of what means to be the owner of the land collective. So it's a continuous education process between community, because I always refer myself, I don't live in collective. So how can I explain to someone who that their option is to live in collective, that it's difficult, it's a continuous education process, so
Yeah. No, that's
to
a
change that individual.
that's a super helpful example, right? That people, if all else was perfect, everyone would have chosen to get an individual deed for their land. But because they saw other communities being displaced happening around, and the collective land tenure presented to them said that this is more secure, and that is why they chose it, right? So I think in Jamaica, we often say Jamaican people think different than those other places, and then it means that those other examples that don't apply to us, but apparently it can, right? And so I wanted to kind of shift gears, right, and talk about the role of technical people, right? So we have 3 planners and a geographer and architect on the call, right? So we're all sort of in the sort of technical space. I'm curious about the role of us technical folks in supporting communities, right? And Carol, I want to carry it over to you to kind of talk about the relationship. You know, what was in that example in Nagazet in Portmore, what was kind of the role that planners were playing versus the community? And to Rachel, and then I kind of want you to talk about what you think the role should actually be, right? Whether or not the technical folks are taking up too much space and not allowing for communities to actually lead in what's happening. Carol, you're muted.
One of the difficulties, so the Portmore municipality, they were very much involved. The councillor for the area, the planners were very much involved. It was a participatory process. But here's where I found it difficult. There are planning laws, Town and Country Planning Act, that state how things should happen. So we have, for example, the stated dimension. Now we're talking about an informal community. So the lot boundaries are not regularized. The width of the road network is not according to standards. And what we found there was almost like, oh my God, this doesn't, follow form. So let me not bother to even give some consideration. It has to be regularized. So when that happens, then we will deal with it. Let's focus more on the, not the out of norm, but those that are, traditional communities. So the plan was prepared. It was given to the municipality with the intention that it would have been incorporated into the larger plan for Portmore, for the municipality. I stand corrected. That was done and given about in 2018. I have yet to see what was proposed being incorporated into the larger plan for Portmore, because it did not meet the traditional standards for planning in Jamaica. So one of the things that I would want to see, as we give consideration to these new approach to how we look at land use and how we incorporate community participation, is one, changing in, even though we have the Local Governance Act that says, you need community participation, is for the technocrats to be more versed and accepted and be willing to see outside of the box, or, these new approaches. Right now, the planning laws said, we can't even look at you if you were to submit an application to the parish council.
So there is zero flexibility in the sort of planning framework as is.
That has been my experience.
Okay.
Well, things can change if the MP or the councillor with influence deemed it
Mhm.
ago. So
Yeah.
under for example, the Housing Act, which gives the minister power to make certain decisions, then things can happen. But
Okay.
it is very top down as opposed to bottom.
Okay. All right. Rachel, want to hop in here?
Yeah, sure. So in terms of a bottom-up question, I think that one thing that is really important to say at the outset is that it is very easy for kind of championing of grassroots approaches to justify social abandonment, right? And so I think it's really important that the question of who pays is central in that, right? And who provides and there's an expectation of time, which I would love to hear from William about, right? So resources of time and money, who is responsible for those? But in terms of the ideas, the planning ideas, I think sourcing those from grassroots communities makes a lot of sense, I think. Someone had put in the chat an interesting question about the inflexibility of the property system, which presumes that we all want to stay in place, right? And I think that one of the things that I was surprised to find when I did the research is that people had left situations where they had a property arrangement, a property relationship to the land, and either because of infrastructural decay, which is another important question of who pays, right? Or because of livelihood changes, maybe their mother who owned the land was domestic for the estate owner, but the daughter became a market vendor, and so it didn't make sense for her to live in the hill because she had to be on the road to get to it, right? So the livelihood changes. There's a lot of reasons why people were moving to an informal settlement in order to make their lives work, right?
Yeah.
So one of the questions is, how do we think about land in a way that acknowledges that the real point is life making, not property making, right? And so I know that's a bit abstract, but for this format, I'm just gonna leave it there.
Mhm.
But I think, and again, on this question of abandonment, I think what's important is that we understand that a lot of these problems come out of a history of, and an ongoing history of a conflict between land and livelihood, right? And so going right back to enslaved people growing their own food on the rest day, right, while they worked all week to grow sugar, right, or whatever the crops were, down into the present, the ability to access a piece of the customary, either customary land relationships or customary economic relationships, such as, anything from higgling to an informal taxi to vending on an unlicensed way, right?
Yeah.
All of these things have to do with the tensions that are left over from being in an economy where people never got enough to sustain themselves from the formal economy, right? And so that is what leaves us in a position that is really systematic in terms of that conflict, which is getting worse because of the speculation on land. And
So
so
much-
one of the things that
Oh,
the
sorry, go
Community
ahead.
Land Trust does,
Mhm.
one of the things that a community land trust does is it mediates that question of the land market, I think, in a way that saves room for what people have been figuring out to do for themselves via capture lands. Did I answer your question?
You did.
think
And I
so.
think you also
Okay.
brought up lots of other rabbit holes I want to go into, but we may not have time. But one of the questions that you had written in the chat for William is, William, could you talk to how the community boards and how the communities work together? Is there funding support for the communities to be involved with, as you said, this continuous process?
So I will try to attend that question and group it with other questions that I have seen in the chat. So it's important to know that this political leverage of the community is started because of the community activism. So community activism is super important for the achievement of our goals, community goals. So, but also we have so many allies and so many collaborators to this process. This project also have an advisory pro bono board that brings along together like 25 professionals for different
Industries?
campus
Mhm.
preparation industries. Thank you. So from legal person, from social workers, planners, economic with some with economic preparation, and all along work along together pro bono with the community. That's important to leverage that also to leverage that political influence, but also answering the question about how the boards works together. Well, the 14 boards that I present the logos for you, they are grouped in the G8, and they make their assemblies I think every 2 years they change the leaders. But also they have monthly regular meetings. I think that they have a good group of directors that have bi-weekly meetings, but also work along together with the board of trustees of the land trust, which work regularly in meetings. They are part of the board of land trust, and the member of that board are part of the board of director of the public corporation. So it's like a web that they are all related, that they need always to have community consultation. We have like 4 or 5 required in the our um policies committees for economic development committee, planning and budget committee, infrastructure committee, that brings along together members of the boards, but also members of the community. Also, all the presentations and programs have been developed within the community. So that's how it works.
Okay.
I think that a question that was asking for the funds. Well, it's very difficult to get funds for all these projects, but from the general budget of the Puerto Rico governmental state, the corporation, the public corporation, have some of the programs to get done, but also the land trust and the G8 work to finding grants from private sector, from philanthropy sector, so they can have the budget to conduct all these programs. I don't know if I answered a
Yeah.
bunch of the questions.
No,
Do you have
that was very efficient, William. I appreciate that. But I wanted to go back to something you had mentioned earlier, and something that Raul had, who was our presenter last month. He had put in the chat. Could you elaborate a little bit on how Caño was able to leverage political support for their cause from outside actors? So after you answer that, I'd love Carol and Rachel to talk about the relationship between land tenuring and politics in Jamaica, and how something like collective land tenure could disrupt that, maybe? William?
Can you repeat that? Sorry.
Yeah, so Raul's question, can you elaborate on how Caño was able to leverage political support from for their cause?
Well, in 2004, there was very specific political situation here in Puerto Rico. We have our first female governor, and she have this interest in making a law that is a special communities law, which bring budget to those communities so they can start their own programming so to develop those communities, etc. But the Caño Martín Peña has been already organized. So I say we will, the community see a opportunity to cope on that situation, that interest from the governor. So they said, well, you are trying to pass this law, but we are ready to have our own law because we know what we need. We have this plan that have been working in those more than 700 meetings, and we are ready, we are here. So the community start to have some meetings with our legislators and put some pressure on that legislator so that the law can be passed. Also, we have the support of the professor from the University of Puerto Rico and the private university, Inter-American University, with the legal clinics, and also the advisory board that I used to mention before. So that's how we get that political influence.
Wonderful,
And
wonderful.
it's a continuous work. It's a continuous work right now. We work along with the legal clinic of the University of Puerto Rico, with the Inter-America University, and with the social workers clinic, and we have students that came from those programs to make an internship in the land trust and in the corporation and the DGA. So it's a continuous process to be working along together from those volunteers and allies and collaborators.
That's great. Carol, Rachel, thoughts about collective land tenure and politics in Jamaica?
Well,
And before you guys go, just know that we are trying to wrap up at 1:15. So, big question, but small answers.
right. So if we use the example of Operation Pride, it will be very scary to go the route of the community land trust, because what that example, and we do really need to do deep research and publish the whole background, because right now there's just arguments. Oh, the one administration did this and the other administration didn't do this. And so we know there was issue of management, and we know there was issue of funding. But when you can see stark distinction where under one administration it was supported, notwithstanding some of the management issues, new administration came in and oops, done, close shop, not even a revisiting of it, even though preliminary research showed that it was a viable approach to land access, low-income individuals accessing land. So I really think that because of these political interference, a project which had potential was stifled. But I think opportunity exists for the academy to put forward through empirical studies the usefulness of community land trust and or what has been tried, looking at Puerto Rico, looking at what has happened in Trinidad and elsewhere, and making some recommendations. So I think that will trump political interference, providing the evidence that of the workability for this.
Last words to you, Rachel.
I guess I'll just speak to what would be the sort of, I think, the elephant in the room when it comes to politics in Jamaica, which is a question of garrisons and now gangs, right? And so what one thing is that I think that there is an overemphasis on the influence of garrisons. I think far fewer informal communities are sort of in the frame of garrison communities than we tell ourselves. The community where I worked, there were people from all political persuasions were represented there. And secondly, really important because especially because of someone who did in the presentation the last time spoke about informal settlements as being rental markets that are run by gangs. And I think that that is a dangerous, what I would say a dangerous mischaracterization. There are 754 informal settlements across the island at last count, and that may represent some portion of them. I don't want to doubt that person's research, but whether or not that's a broad pattern, I doubt it, and certainly wouldn't hold true from the place where I did research. But what that does is that it gives a reason to treat what is a poverty issue, right, and a livelihood issue as an issue of crime. And I think we have enough, rationales going around in Jamaica about treating people like criminals. And so I think we should be really cautious with that. And this is kind of political, but I may not have time. I would love to know Dr. Archer's thoughts on the question of pride in terms of scale, because it seemed like pride required the formation of a benevolent society that might be similar to a community board, but that those required, a significant portion of people to be involved. In other words, I think a benevolent society required like 21 people. In the community I was working with, 21 people weren't both able and willing to do it.
Yeah.
Just quickly, all the pride communities that I'm aware of, they had to be registered as benevolent societies.
Mm-hmm.
And they had structures. Yes, there were some that needed to be trained, build the capacity. But that was not allowed to happen to its fullest because of political interference.
Right,
So,
right.
to answer your question,
Right.
it
I
was
think-
sheer political interference. And yes, there were evidence of mismanagement, but that could have been handled and, putting the necessary structures in place. But again, with a change of administration, it was shelved pretty much.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna hop in here. Last sentence.
Last
Yes.
sentence
Yes,
is that's one of the things I noticed in William's presentation is that we're talking about 11,000 people. And so how do we scale up our efforts here so that we're dealing with, 10,000 people as opposed to 300 people? And that's all.
Yeah. So I know that we can continue this conversation forever, but I know that can't happen. But I just really want to thank you all for participating in this conversation. The goal with these chats is to, one, understand the problems that we're facing in Jamaica are regional problems. As the Caribbean, we are facing similar struggles around the ways that we have commodified land, the ways that we're treating land, and it has, implications across so many sectors. And so, as we're thinking about solutions, we need to be looking regionally as opposed to the north, right? And I just wanted to thank William and the team. I know there's a bunch of folks from Caño Peña who hopped onto this call. Hopefully we get to see you sometime soon, meet in Jamaica, a conference here. I don't know, it would be great, right? But I want to thank you guys. I want to thank Rachel and Carol for joining on. And of course, everyone who was in the chat. I know Amilcar left a bunch of comments, which I agree with everything you said. I could read them all out. And then just to say that this conversation was recorded and it will eventually make its way to Island City Lab's YouTube channel. And then lastly, this is the second to last of our conversations for the Captured Land series, the last one. We're going to be talking to the Barbuda land actors. We're going to be talking about, the title of that webinar is Legacy Land, Disaster, Capitalism, and Land Grabs, and that's going to be October 15th. Yeah, so look out for marketing for that. Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, folks, have a good rest of your day. Bye.
Thank you so much, William.
Thank you. Thank you.